since economics has, I mean, naturally it keeps coming up. The last thing I wanted to ask about this election specifically is whether you also account beyond this large scale change narrative for the outcome of the election with an appeal to economic factors. Like I know inflation, for instance, plagued Biden for a very long time, but are there other economic factors that you think really contributed to Trump's victory?
Oh, sure. My goodness. Yeah. I don't even think inflation played a role, but it shouldn't be yanked out of the context of everything else. Um, the job prospects for millions of young people in this country are awful. There aren't jobs. I mean, even in my field, my students, people that I sit on doctoral committees and I have to examine a student and I have to make a decision whether he or she gets their PhD or not, whether this dissertation is acceptable. The students that it's harder and harder for them to get decent jobs. If I had time, I'd give you a lecture, but the catastrophe of higher education in this country. When I went to graduate school, I never questioned. Of course I'd get a job being a professor. That's what people with PhDs from fancy universities could get if they wanted it. I might not get the job of my dreams, be professor at this school, or sure, but that I would have a problem having an income, and it never dawned on me. And that's not because of me. It didn't dawn on my fellow students either. We never talked about it. We never worried about it. No, not at all. Zero. My students obsess about it. That's a radical difference. And most of my students cannot get the kind of job I have. All of my adult life, I taught 2 courses a semester, 2 semesters a year, and got paid a salary that I could have a wife, which I had, and 2 children, which I had, still have, and I never thought about it. And I enjoy good food and wine. I like to travel. I have tastes that cost money. And I always had enough. I'm not super rich, but that's all gone. My students worry how they'll live in terms of income, what kind of work they will be able to get. Many of them are adjunct professors who teach a course over here, then they run across town, teach another. There's no time to write. There's no time to do research. There's barely enough time to kind of keep up with, which, by the way, is a diminution of our education system. Serious. It means large numbers of young people are being educated by folks that are exhausted. I wasn't exhausted. I had time to read and prepare my lectures. Very precious to me. I learned, as any teacher who's honest will tell you, you learn much more when you're a teacher than you ever did when you were a student. I had that opportunity. Most of the people like me don't have that opportunity anymore. So that's a very serious problem. It's only for 2 or 3 million people that are the folks who teach in colleges and universities. But that's not an unimportant part of the economy. I would argue it's spectacularly important. I don't know if you're aware or if your audience is, but we have more and more colleges and universities that are closing every month. Why? Because their economics is impossible, right? They can't get the students because the students are increasingly unwilling to load up with the debt without which you can't go to college anymore. Wasn't my case. Most of my fellow students didn't. I did. I had to borrow. My family had no money. But most of the students around me didn't. Their families had enough money to pay. Mine didn't, but I never worried. I didn't have to borrow that much, and I knew I would have a job which would allow me to pay off my debt, which is exactly what happened to me. I expected it. I got it. That's all gone now. That's all gone. China is opening a new university once a month.